Welcome to Will's Personal Development Podcast, where we bring you data and science-backed answers and advice from billionaires. Good evening, everyone. This is Will Chow, as you guys know, and today I'm here with Dr. Robert Glover. Dr. Glover has been a tremendous success recently. His book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, has been blowing up across the scene. And he's helped thousands of nice guys succeed with their relationships, with their sex lives, their dating lives, and so forth. Dr. Glover, do you want to give even more of an intro to who you are and how you can help?
Well, that's a good intro. Thank you, Will. I'm glad to be here. So I'll just throw out front, I am a recovering nice guy, and we can talk about what that is to be a nice guy and what maybe recovery from the nice guy syndrome is, and why being a nice guy maybe doesn't always work so well. So we can talk about all of those things. So I'm a recovering nice guy. I'm a little bit older than your audience. I have a son that probably fits right in with the age of your audience. He's 33. So I've been doing this for a while. I've worked with a lot of nice guys of all ages, and I really like working with young men, especially because that's kind of when they have the greatest opportunity to become aware of their nice guy patterns and why they don't serve them well, and find out how to do things different. And hopefully we'll talk about those things.
Absolutely. Now, some of you have already heard of Dr. Glover and read his book, but some haven't. So could you briefly go over what a nice guy is and why it's bad to be a nice guy?
Yeah, I know that sounds contradictory. And 25 years ago, I would have told people I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And I thought that was a good thing. I didn't understand why everybody didn't think that way. I thought, well, if we were all just considerate and generous and try to help other people, if we can just be mature and reasonable and avoid conflict, why wouldn't everybody want to be that way? So what I didn't realize is that I had adopted a roadmap beginning very early in childhood, and that roadmap had developed throughout my lifetime. It began in my family. It continued in the church I was raised in. It was influenced by the culture I grew up in the 60s and 70s in the United States as a young man. But basically, the core belief of a nice guy is that I'm not okay just as I am. And this belief gets usually internalized at a young age, usually from misinterpreting, misperceiving experiences around them. We'll talk more about that. And then you internalize your view about yourself and the world based on a misinterpretation from a very immature mind of the experiences in life. And so, for example, if you're a baby or a small child, and maybe your mom is stressed out or depressed, or dad is absent and never available, or your parents are fighting, or your parents split, what happens is that stresses little children out, and they tend to believe they are the cause of that. Whatever happens to a child, they're narcissistic by nature. They believe they caused that. So if there's stress or problems in their life, in their world, they believe they caused that, and they believe there must be something wrong with them that causes mom to be stressed out or depressed or crying all the time, or causes dad to leave or be angry or to spank them. And so they internalize there's something wrong with me. And if I can just become what I think people want me to be, and or hide the things about me that seem to get a negative reaction. Now, I'm saying this kind of real coherently as an adult speaking to other adults, but this is actually a 3-month-old brain trying to process this. A 3-year-old brain, a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old is trying to internalize, how do I make my world smooth and happy and problem-free and get my needs met? So that's where we all do that. Everybody does to some degree, but the nice guy's paradigm is, if I can just become good enough, I'll be loved and get my needs met and have a good life. And if I can hide those things about me that tend to create negative reactions, then everything will be okay. So that's the nice guy paradigm. But unfortunately, carrying that into teenage years and into young adulthood and adulthood of trying to be something you're not, trying to get approval, trying to get recognition, trying to get validation, trying to be that good guy that everybody likes or that women want to have as a boyfriend, and trying to hide certain things about you. your wants, your needs, your desires, your sexuality, your porn habit, whatever it may be, you're never you. And if you're never being you, several problems arise from that. One is you don't live up to your full potential. One is you don't let people see how you really are, so they can't just be attracted to the you with its rough edges, its imperfections, and the way you go about trying to approach people to get them to like you and want to be with you actually often tends to make it more difficult for people to get close. And we can talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was a great definition, and I think a lot of our audience are nice guys. So specifically, I kind of want to go into signs that uh, you may be a nice guy and why, what you can do about this is I would assume one problem would be anything with relationships. If you're having a lot of fights or you can't get dates, is that true?
That's a good place to start. And a lot of men that seek me out, whether it's when I was in private practice, then come join my groups, or whether they, come find me online or do consultation or take one of my classes, the most common dynamic is they're having some kind of relationship related issue. Either they don't know how to date, they can't get a girlfriend, they can't get laid, or maybe they're in a relationship and it's tumultuous. The woman's not happy. They're not happy. They're having problems there. And then a lot of times men seek me out when their relationship is about to end or has just ended and they're kind of in crisis. A lot of men seem to find my book after a breakup. So a lot of this is relationship oriented. And there's probably a lot of things that go into that. But probably some of the keys that your listeners might look for to kind of do a little self-analysis, a little armchair, check-in with self, is if they have nice guy tendencies. One, do they try to please people? Do they go out of their way to try to make other people happy and get their approval? Does it cause them stress or anxiety if it seems like people don't approve of them or don't like them? Do they tend to find themselves hiding certain things about themselves, not telling the whole truth, not letting people see who they really are, leaving information out, even lying maybe to impress people or to avoid conflict or avoid somebody being upset? Do they find themselves frustrated in getting their needs met? Do they seem to give a lot more than they get? A real key one for a lot of nice guys is, do they find themselves feeling resentful or helpless or victimized? That's really common with nice guys because they're doing a lot of giving to get, and they're operating by something that I call covert contracts. And I want to come back to that in a minute. And so if you're giving to get, if you're paying attention to other people, trying to make them happy, giving them to meet their needs, and then nothing's coming back to you in the way that you want, or you're not letting it come back to you, you often end up feeling really frustrated, really resentful, really helpless, really victimized. And what tends to happen with a lot of nice guys I work with, they either just quit trying altogether, or they just try harder doing the same things that don't work, or they tend to just kind of go lose themselves in video games or pornography or alcohol or pot, sometimes in their work. So if any of these characteristics are hitting home with your listeners, it could be a pretty good indicator that they have at least some tendencies of the nice guy.
Absolutely. So many of our listeners are Asian American millennial men, and I'm sure that a lot of them, from what I've seen and heard from them, they struggle with a lot of victimization feelings and frustration, as you mentioned. So I kind of want to touch on that topic and ask you, what do you think is one thing that can be done about this? Specifically, I think one of the big complaints is that, they live in America and they want to date and they find other women of different cultures attractive, and it's just very frustrating getting any results. They don't really try. They do, but they just kind of like they talk to women. They befriend women, and they
Yeah.
assume that this will naturally lead to a girlfriend. But the years tick on, and they're an engineer, a doctor, and it's still nothing's happening, and their biological clock is ticking, and that builds the frustration. Can,
Okay.
can we talk about that?
Yeah, let me talk about it from a few angles. I'm going to make myself some notes. So I remember. So let me talk a little bit about covert contracts,
Sure.
and let me talk about what I call becoming we'll call it nice guy seduction, and then let's talk about overcoming these feeling like a victim, how to go about doing that. I think all of these will relate to where your guys are at, where your listeners are at. First of all, let me talk about covert contracts. I mentioned that a minute or so ago, and I want to put this out there because this is really core. And I think if somebody was going to take my book and just dissect it and boil it down to what is the most core message, because this is the message a lot of guys will write me or tell me, hey, this is what really resonated that gave me clarity about my nice guy roadmap, my nice guy paradigm. And that's around the covert contracts. And in my work with myself and thousands of nice guys of all ages, I believe pretty much every nice guy has 3 core covert contracts. And all of these covert contracts are all an if-then proposition. And as the term implies, they're all covert, they're all hidden, and often unconscious. So even the nice guy isn't really aware that these are his roadmap for life, whether it be in work, career, family, dating, relationship, but they're crucial. Covert contract number 1 says that if I'm a good guy, then people will like me and love me. And then in terms of relationship, especially dating, we can add to that. If I'm a good guy, then the women I desire will desire me as well. They'll see I'm a good guy. They'll think that's the guy I want to be with. So there's covert contract number 1. That's that desire to be a good guy. And it's like I said, it's the if then. Covert contract number 2. If I meet other people's needs without them having to ask, then they will meet my needs without me having to ask. Now, nice guys do a lot of this, and this leads to a lot of their resentment and frustration and victimization. They think they're doing things for other people, like maybe they like a girl. So they listen to her talk about her problems, and they're attentive to her. And maybe she needs some help with something, so they help her with her homework, or they give her a ride somewhere. Maybe if they're in a club or a bar, they buy her drinks, or they try to do nice things to get her approval. And then they hope, well, I'm meeting her needs, then she'll want to meet my needs, which of course is to have a girlfriend or to have sex. And there's a lot of problems with this particular covert contract. Number 1, the nice guy isn't usually even aware of it, but nobody else is either. And while he's trying to do things he thinks will make other people happy or meet their needs, he may or may not even be getting close. But then he's expecting other people to meet his needs, but nobody knows what his needs are. Usually nice guys aren't very good at demonstrating their needs. They're not very good at asking for what they want. And we're actually often very terrible receivers. When somebody does try to do something for us, we often don't let them. It makes us anxious. It makes us feel guilty. We think we're going to owe them something. So even while we're giving to get, basically, we're not very good at receiving. So a lot of times that leads to a lot of frustration and resentful, and guys saying, well, I don't get what I want in life. Third covert contract is that if I do everything right, I will have a smooth, problem-free life. Now, there's several flaws in this particular paradigm. One is I don't know where the rule book is to tell how to do everything right. I suppose some religious movements have said, here's the rules, follow them. But there's disagreement on those. And even if you could do everything right, that doesn't make life smooth and problem-free. We live in a chaotic world. We don't live in a smooth, problem-free world. The very nature of life is that it is chaotic and ever-changing. But nice guys really believe if I can just figure out how to do everything right, then everything will go right, and nothing will bite me on the ass, and nothing will ever, go haywire. So nice guys use these 3 covert contracts, and it leads to a lot of that frustration and resentment because they don't work. But the nice guy doesn't have any other paradigm, no other roadmap. So he often, as I said, just tries harder to be a better guy or to meet people's needs or to do it right. Or he just kind of quits trying it all and just kind of gets depressed or withdraws, or like I said, maybe goes into alcohol or porn or video games, just things that don't, require much of him. And so that's one of the core problems. And that leads to a lot of victimization and frustration. And we're going to talk in a minute about how to overcome feelings of victimization. But I'm going to encourage your listeners to just kind of check in with themselves. Maybe even get a little notebook and just kind of start observing themselves and maybe write down those 3 covert contracts and just ask yourself throughout the day, check in with yourself. Do I do these things? Do I try to be good? Do I try to look nice? Do I try to have all the answers? Do I try to drive the nicest car so that people will like me and want to be my friend? Do I do lots of nice things for women and listen to them talk about their problems and basically become what I call a girlfriend with a penis? That you're just there for them all the time, but you're in the friend zone because you don't do anything bold. But we're going to get back to that in a minute for nice guy seduction. So check in. Am I trying to be a good guy so that people like me? And check in. Am I meeting other people's needs? Do I sacrifice me? Do I go out of my way to help other people? All the while I'm sacrificing my own life and nobody's doing the same in return for me. And then ask yourself, do I get frustrated when life doesn't go easily or go well? Do I think I've done it right? I've got money in the bank, so to speak. Everything should go my way because of all the good things that I do. Just check in with that. And if that resonates for you, you'll probably find that is a core piece of any feelings of depression that you have, feelings of being frustrated, feelings of resentment, feelings of victimization, feelings of not living up to your potential and not being what you can be. So I'll encourage you guys to check in with those covert contracts. And I think that'll be very informative for them.
Awesome. Yeah. That's some
Okay.
information right there.
And then nice guy seduction. Because and I spent most of my life practicing nice guy seduction. And the 2 things I'll tell you. Number 1, it doesn't work. And I'm going to explain in a minute. And number 2, when it does work, it tends to get you the most crazy, broken women because of the way you go about trying to get women. Now, nice guy seduction is based on that belief that I mentioned that I'm not good enough. I'm not okay just as I am. I have to make an impression on people. I have to get them to like me. I have to hide anything that might cause them to not want to be around me. So the nice guy seduction, as I mentioned before, usually is trying to please women. And this is for straight men. For gay men, it'd be the same thing. It's trying to please other men that you're attracted to. You kind of pick somebody out and think, I like them. I'm attracted to them. And then you try to get their approval. You try to get them to like you in return. So you do nice things for them. You give them surprises. You help them out. You listen. The main thing is you listen to them talk. Now, especially in straight relationships, women will talk to anybody. And, if they've got problems, anybody that listen to them talk about their problems, they'll talk. I used to think if a woman wanted to talk to me about her problems, I was special. And then that was going to lead to her thinking I'm a really great guy. See what a great listener I am. I'm empathetic. I'm different than those jerks that actually cause a lot of her problems she's complaining about, right? But what happens is, women will talk to anybody, and especially young women, teenage girls, young adult women, they're on their phones all the time. They're on social media. They're talking to their girlfriends. They'll talk to anybody. And it doesn't mean you're special. And so I've told men that in my experience, there's a direct inverse relationship between how much time a woman spends talking to a guy about her problems and the likelihood that he's going to get laid. You become a girlfriend with a penis. You're like her girlfriends. You're just listening a lot, and you're being passive. You're not being bold. You're not going for what you want. You're not risking anything, and so you end up in that friend zone. And you've got this big fantasy built up of what it'd be like if this woman was your girlfriend. And then if you ever do anything bold, she's surprised, like, oh, I never thought of you in that way. You're my friend. That would be too weird if, we went on a date or I kissed you. You're my friend. And so you're nodding your head. We probably, most of us know that routine. We've been there. We've done that. Wait a minute. I'm a nice guy. Or the women will say to us, someday you're going to make a really lucky woman. very happy. And you go, what about you? Aren't you that lucky woman? I can make you happy. So that nice guy seduction of trying to please and get a woman's approval just does not work very well. And so what I teach men is that for me, the core dynamic of relationships, there's a lot that goes into this, but for me, you got to begin with yourself. Get happy with you. Get happy in your own skin. Live your life on your terms. Take good care of yourself, exercise, have good discipline in your life, but do it for you and live life on your terms. Get up every day and go have the adventure you want to have. That then makes you look interesting to other people because you're out there having an adventure. And women are attracted to men that look bold, that are living life on their terms. And then the core pieces when you are interacting with women, I tell guys, be you. And that means don't hold back, act on impulse, blurt. A lot of guys will say, well, I had a chance to get her number, but, I was afraid. No, you want to get her number, take your phone out and say, hey, give me your number. I'm going to give you a call in a couple of days. We're going to hook up later on. Take your phone out and say, give me your number. You have the impulse to take her hand and lead her across the dance floor or, say, hey, come here, I'm going to buy you a drink. Whatever it is, be bold. Don't hold back. Don't censor. Or guys will say, well, I know women like guys that are funny or they can make them laugh, but I'm not funny. And a lot of times I'll tell guys, yeah, you're really funny. Well, I can't think of anything to say when I'm talking to a woman. And I go, yeah, you've got thoughts in your head. I said, unless you're a fucking Zen master, you've got thoughts in your head, but you're censoring them. You're pre-rejecting. You're going, well, if I say this, she might be offended or I might come off as weird. No, be who you are. If you have an impulse, act on it. If you have a thought, blurt it. Sometimes you're going to crash and burn. Sometimes the woman's going to go, whoa, well, why'd you say that? Or what are you doing that for? And it takes practice, but practice being yourself. That sounds really kind of weird, but practice being yourself. Don't pre-reject yourself. Don't think, well, she wouldn't be interested in me, so I'm not going to even try. Or if I do something, what if she rejects me? I'll feel foolish. Okay. Welcome to real life. We all feel foolish every now and then. We all get rejected. But if you don't take the chance, that nothing's going to happen. So, as I said, I'm kind of giving the condensed version of this, but be you, be bold, get out of your comfort zone, risk, and just kind of show up with the women, and they're not going to all like you. You don't like all of them, but there's a phrase by a writer I really like. His name is David Data. And he says, choose a woman who chooses you. And what that means is don't get your sights set on some woman who doesn't know you exist and try to go get her to like you. If you're living a really interesting life and if you're looking around, women are paying attention to you. They're looking at you. They're checking you out. They go out of their way to ask you questions. Those are the women who are choosing you. And then begin to be bold with those women and see where that goes. Instead of just limiting to yourself, well, I want that woman over there. And then, number one, that's a lot of hard work. And number two, it rarely works out. So choose a woman who chooses you. And I think guys will have a lot more fun and their dating life will become a lot more active.
I love that. I love that phrase, blurt out what is on your mind. I think a lot of our listeners come from culture, from their parents where they're very risk averse, and I think it's good to kind of restrict what you say so you don't do something impulsive that's wrong. But sometimes I guess you can swing to the opposite end of the extreme and limit and filter yourself too much.
Yeah. I mentioned to you before we started recording that I've worked with a lot of men from Asian cultures, India, Pakistan, China, and those cultures have not had dating in the culture. Not too long ago, most marriages were arranged by families, or you married the woman at the farm next door. And as you said, those cultures have what's called a lot of fusion in them. is that, the parents have these really strict, rigid rule systems of how you should be. You're our child. You should behave this way. You should go to this school. You should study this. You should become this. You should take care of us when we get old. You should marry this woman. You should marry this type of woman. And so you're right. Asian culture can be really rigid about that, with really high expectations and really kind of narrow parameters of acceptable behavior. And especially when young Asian men come to America. Often they may even be born in America, or maybe they come as a teenager or a young adult. Maybe they got an education, they come to work in the tech industry or whatever it may be. And then they come and they've kind of lived under this kind of rigid, way. Here's the way that you be. And then they want to date in American culture, and it's really frustrating. I've worked with a lot of men that is really, really difficult and challenging for them because of the culture they came from in their Asian culture, and how their parents tend to be, and that rigidness in the rules. So sometimes it can take practice. The other thing that works against, I found a lot of young men, but I've seen it especially with Asian men, they hang out with other young Asian men who are also bad at talking to women. And so like none of them, can kind of really like help the other along. And so you may have to join a support group of some kind, get a coach of some kind. For example, I teach dating classes. There's probably, 100,000 men on the internet now teaching dating classes. There's good books out there, like Models by Mark Manson. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But it's going to involve getting out of your comfort zone and maybe getting out of your cultural expectations, and recognizing that may rock the boat. It may rock the boat with your peers. It may rock the boat with your family. It may rock the boat in your cultural situations. But I think every immigrant wave goes through that when they come to a new country. They have to find a way to adapt to that new culture. And the kids usually do it much better than their parents do it. And so, yeah, your audience, maybe many of them are in that they're adapting to a new culture in ways their parents haven't yet. And so it's going to involve rocking the boat with their parents. And again, they may need a support system to do that. They may need, a life coach, a personal coach, a men's group, something to help them make those transitions.
Yeah, can you talk about, we mentioned this before this recording started, but can you talk about that exercise you recommend for people who struggle with their parents' expectations and breaking out of that and doing something different?
Yeah, there's I'm going to use two technical terms, fusion and differentiation. And I remember studying this when I was in graduate school in my PhD program, studying family systems. So I'm going to give your listeners a little bit of a technical background, and then we'll apply it to real life. In all emotional systems, there is a tendency towards homeostasis. Systems like homeostasis. That's a resistance to change. So, and most animals tend to live within emotional systems. Birds fly in a flock, fish are in a school, lions are in a pride, dogs are in a pack, and we humans are tribal. So we've all lived in emotional systems as well. And within these emotional systems, feeling states are easily transmitted. Energetic states are transmitted, especially anxiety. Anxiety is very easily transmitted. And most animals, including humans, created connections within these pods, these groups, these tribes, these clans, whatever, we have different names for different animals. They all do that to increase their odds of survival, because there's greater chance of survival within groups than solo and individually, especially out in the wild. So these emotional groups, these emotional systems originally come together for the well-being of everybody involved. And maybe every participant in that system sacrifices a little bit of self for the well-being of the system, kind of like the Borg for any of your Star Trek Next Generation fans. It's kind of like you get assimilated in the Borg and you lose you, but then you benefit from being a part of that whole. Now, as I said, in these emotional systems, anxiety is contagious. If you watch a bunch of birds, a flock of birds on power lines, and if one of them gets startled and kind of flies up a little bit, the rest of them fly up as well. Now, did they get startled? No, but the anxiety of one triggered an anxiety response in the other. In the old American Western movies, when they had a cattle drive and maybe one cow would get spooked, and then they have a stampede and all the cows are rushing. Not all the cows got spooked, but the anxiety was contagious and they all had an anxiety reaction. So in these emotional systems, let's bring it into humans. The tribe is an emotional system. The family is an emotional system. Emotional systems are cultural. And so they're striving for homeostasis, trying to keep things kind of the same as a way to manage the anxiety, the existential anxiety of bad things happening. So, and this is especially strong in Asian cultures to this day. It used to be strong in Western cultures as well, but it's kind of dissipated, but it's still there. It's just more subtle. And so in Asian cultures, it's kind of like you should behave this way. If you deviate from these norms, not only is it going to be bad, and you don't even maybe know what bad is, but you're going to embarrass the family, you're going to embarrass you. You may cause your parents to suffer in their old age. You may cause them embarrassment in front of their peers and their family. So there's that real rigid fusion. Kind of the message is you belong to us, therefore you should behave in this way. And that gets passed on, and it's the way the family is trying to control anxiety states. So if one family member kind of rocks that boat a little bit, and maybe instead of going to Stanford, they decide to start their own internet business. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the family is anxious and upset, and then they give what's called change back messages. They, subtly or not so subtly, they try to pull that one back in to fit in with the family model. That child is supposed to go to Stanford, but they're thinking, no, I want to be an internet marketer. I want to be an entrepreneur. No, you have to go to Stanford and go. And now there's more anxiety, and so they amp up this attempt to control to get the anxiety levels back down. And then what happens is if that maybe that child breaks free from that and goes out to become an internet marketer when their parents want them to go to Stanford, the family will actually kind of pull back in and they'll manage their anxiety, in their own ways. But the person that leaves that fuse system often has a lot of anxiety. They feel like they're doing something wrong and that bad things are going to happen to them. And the term for that is neurotic guilt. You haven't really done anything wrong. There's no rule book that says you should go to Stanford just because your parents are insisting you go to Stanford. But you feel like you've done something wrong. You feel like you're creating harm for your family, for your parents, that you're damaging them. So this can be a real challenge. And this process is called differentiation, where you're asking yourself, what do I want? What makes me happy? What do I think is the right thing to do here? And that can be a challenge. Children can't naturally do that because they don't have a lot of power. But as we get to be teenagers and adults, that's a normal developmental process to differentiate by asking, what do I want? What makes me happy? And then the keys of differentiation, not only is that ability to ask yourself, what do you want? But then part two is to follow through on that, even when there's that pressure, those change back messages from your family, from your culture, the tribe, your church, whatever it may be. So there's one bit of pressure, kind of the analogy I've heard, it's the other crabs trying to keep one crab from climbing out of the bucket. No, you can't go. And they're pulling the crab back in as he's trying to escape the bucket. So there's that external pressure, but there's often a lot of internal pressure, that neurotic guilt, that anxiety. I'm doing something wrong. This is bad. This is not going to end well. And this can apply to a lot of different things. It might apply to their choice of where they're going to go to school, choice of education, choice of career, choice of women they want to date, choice of how they spend their leisure time, how they spend their money. And if they're breaking out of those cultural norms, they're going to get a lot of change back messages and might have a lot of anxiety between their ears that says, I'm doing something wrong, that this could end badly. But this is part of what growing is. This is what growing up is learning to begin to make conscious decisions for ourselves, not just reacting to the fused family, because what happens in most fused families, the children go one of two routes. One is they go, let's just call it the nice guy route. And that is they go along to get along. They follow the rules, but they push all their needs and wants underground. Now, they may still be disobeying mom and dad. They may still be going and doing things that, they may even be lying to mom and dad about where they're going to school and what kind of grades they're making. I had a client from a Pakistani family whose parents wanted him to be a doctor, and they thought he was in med school making good grades. He wasn't. He was playing music. But it was hidden. He didn't let his parents see it. And finally, after several years, he told his parents, and his parents said, "Well, we aren't happy you lied to us, but we want you to be happy." And he goes, "What? You mean I can do what I want? You'll support me?" And they says, "Yes, we want you to be happy." And he spent several years lying to his parents because he thought they would resist that he wanted to be a musician. So for nice guys, we kind of go along to get along. We ask for forgiveness rather than ask for permission, but it goes underground. We hide a lot of stuff from our parents, from our culture. It goes underground. The second response to fused families is what's called pushback. And then that pushback is when basically, if I do what you say, you always win, you have control, I don't exist. There is no me. So you basically do the opposite of what your parents want. Your parents want you to go to college and get a college degree. You drop out your junior year of high school. Your parents, have sexual fidelity is this really important, sexual purity. And, the teenage girl, is bringing home guys 15 years older and having sex and getting knocked up at 15. That pushback is doing the opposite. Now, unfortunately, this is often very self-destructive. And you kind of cut off your nose to spite your face. And if you're afraid if you do anything the way your parents want you to do it, they won again. And so for a lot of young adults, this can go on for years of them self-destructing until maybe they either get sober or they wake up or they find religion or they get married or have a kid and they go, "I can't keep doing this. I need to go back to school. I'm smart. I need to get a degree." "Oh, but that's what mom and dad wanted all along." They're going to say they were right. "I don't care. I'm doing it because it's right for me." So that's differentiation. When you get to that point of saying what's right for me, no matter whether you were hiding everything like a nice guy or pushing back and doing the opposite, at some point we grow up and say, what is right for me? And then we do that, and then we build support systems to help us do that. And that's the best way I know to overcome those feelings of feeling victimized and I don't have control over my life. Ask yourself what feels right to you, build support systems, and then move forward and adjust course as needed, but launch yourself out there. Go do what feels right.
Wow, that was amazing. So many insights. I could picture some of the listeners' eyes light up when they heard some of those examples, because that's probably them in a nutshell. So that was fantastic. Um, I want to ask you about, uh, breaking free from excuses. I'm thinking into the psychology of my listeners, and I think one of the big excuses that they may have amongst many is that, "Oh, this is very interesting stuff. I think I'm a nice guy, but it's if I don't know, if I talk to a girl and she rejects me, I'm going to see her every day and it's going to ruin my reputation." So how does an average listener like that break free from what's in their head, their perceived, dangers?
Well, that's a really good question. It's funny because I'm editing a book that I've written and I'm working on, and I was today just editing the part on excuses. All excuses is a way to keep you feeling safe, right? To have anything in life, to have a great life, whether it's your career, making money, having adventures, having great relationships, dating great women, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You can't just cruise along on cruise control and not take any risks and have a great life. If you get up and do what you did yesterday, you're going to keep having the same thing day after day. So it involves getting out of your comfort zone. But the human mind and the human brain doesn't like to feel anxious. And getting out of your comfort zone makes you feel anxious because it's the unknown. You don't know what the result's going to be if you act on impulse and tell that girl, to give you a phone number. You don't know what the outcome's going to be if you don't go to Stanford and you instead build a website and start as an online. You've never done it before. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. All you can see is, well, I see other people have done it, so if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And that's actually one of my mantras. What one man can do, another man can do. If this person can, make a lot of money being an online marketer, so can I. If this person can get a book published, so can I. So if it can be done, it can be done again. But if you've never been there, you don't know. It's foreign territory. And so it creates anxiety. And this is true for everybody. Every human experiences this. And if we let our anxieties control us, nothing is ever going to change. Now, because the mind doesn't like feeling anxiety, it will do things to avoid anxiety, like play it safe. Like instead of building your website, you're going to play video games because, that's kind of playing it safe. And one way to feel safe is to make excuses. And often these are based on our self-limiting beliefs. They're based on our fear of outcome, based on the unknown, but they're excuses. And so what I'll encourage your listeners to do, well, since they already have a notebook, maybe that they're writing, some of their covert contracts in, maybe start noticing their excuses. And their excuses will tend to come up when they entertain the idea of doing something that makes them uncomfortable. Whether that's talking to a woman they don't know or asking a woman out that maybe they've had a crush on, or, changing majors in college. The excuses will come up. And for most of us, the most common excuse, and this is interesting that you asked this because I'm in a men's group myself right now. And a couple of weeks back, one of our weekly exercise involved answering a question, where do you make excuses? What are your excuses? And I remember writing, actually, I don't think I've got too many excuses going on right now. And then it dawned on me a day or so later, I have a really big excuse. I'll get to it later. That's my number one excuse. I'm going to do that, but I'll get to it later. Yeah, I'm going to talk to her, but not right now. I'm going to start on that term paper, but not right now. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to, get to the gym later. So that, I don't know if that's everybody else's number one excuse, and everyone, all the others are just kind of clustered on top of that.
Yeah, a lot with a lot of my readers, procrastination.
Yeah, I'll get to it later. Just not right now. I'm going to do it, just not right now. So if your listeners could maybe even just observe that particular excuse. Well, they want to go talk to that girl right now. She's busy, or she's on her phone, or what if she rejects me in front of everybody here in the Starbucks and everybody looks at me? Later, not right now. I'll get to it later. Observe that excuse and just realize, be gentle with yourself. Oh, I'm making that excuse because it makes me uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. I'm out of my comfort zone. But remind yourself, and this is true. I had to learn to date in my late 40s when I got divorced after being married for 25 years. And, I was a terrible dater. I always used nice guy seduction, and I always got crazy women as a result. But then when I really learned to date, it scared me. Everybody is scared around dating, but you get some tools, you decide you're going to go practice those tools, and you just keep doing that until it doesn't scare you. It's true for everything else in life. Go get a support system, go get a coach, go learn how to do something new, and then go practice it until your anxiety comes down and it feels normal. But just know, everybody feels fear when they get out of their comfort zone. That's okay. Tell yourself, I'll handle it, and then go do it anyway. And then actually the rush, the thrill that comes, and probably this, your listeners know it, something you've been putting off, something made you anxious, something you've been procrastinating on, and finally you went and did it, and you leaned into the fear, and doesn't matter how it turned out, you did it, and then you just feel that rush and the relief. That wasn't so hard. Why was I avoiding that? Why was I putting that off? And then you learn something from it. And the next time it's easier. So, pay attention to that excuse. Later. I'll get to it later. It's not right now. And it's to keep you from feeling anxiety. But it's okay if you feel anxiety. You can still feel anxiety. Soothe yourself. Tell yourself you'll handle it. Take a good deep breath. And then just start walking. Move in the direction you need to go.
Wonderful. One of the concepts I see a lot with your work is, nice guys swinging to the opposite end of the extreme, thinking that's the only option, whether it's, turning into an asshole or, thinking that they have to go from non-sexual to, extremely sexual and being very overt with their intentions with a stranger that they've never met. Can you talk a little bit about, how there's more of a spectrum in there?
Yeah, what you referred to is normal, and uh, often when we learn something new, we do go to an extreme, and that's okay. For example, I give the example in the book that when a nice guy starts learning about boundaries. I was in my 30s on my second marriage and had a PhD in marriage and family therapy before I ever learned about boundaries. That it's okay to say no, I'm going to, or stop. And a lot of nice guys, when they start learning how to set boundaries, I call them, they become kamikaze boundary setters. They use a chainsaw to set their boundaries when a fly swatter would do. So that's pretty normal. So sometimes when you go from one extreme, you just go to the other. And then hopefully, if you have some degree of awareness or consciousness, you then begin to find the moderation. You begin to find out, okay, I only have to use as much resistance as necessary to set my boundary, or only have to, do this. I don't have to go. But sometimes it takes going to that extreme. I know when I became single in my 40s, I got out of a 14-year marriage where maybe we average sex 2 or 3 times a year. We might have it once a month, but we'd go 6 months without sex. And then when I was in my late 40s and started dating, all of a sudden women were coming on to me. Women were propositioning me. I thought, what planet have I landed on? Women are saying, well, I don't necessarily want to date you, but I want to have sex with you. And I'm going, wow. And so I, started saying yes to all those sexual opportunities because that had never happened in my lifetime. And then, after having sex with, a bunch of women, I started realizing, I'm not really enjoying this. These women want to have sex with me, but do I really want to have sex with them? And am I enjoying it? And I started realizing, I'd rather have sex with a woman that I've gotten to know a little bit. I like who she is. I feel comfortable with her. So I came back to a space where I started consciously going slower, getting to know a woman better. Even if she was pushing for sex, I'd go slower. And it was often waiting till, 4th, 5th, 6th date before we would even talk about having sex. Now, I'd still be affectionate, touch, maybe kiss, take her hand, lead her. I'm an affectionate guy, but I really slowed down on just getting naked and getting in bed with them. So I went from, not a lot of sex to having a bunch with a bunch of different women to kind of back to where, okay, I'm being more conscious and making more choices about this. So that's okay. It's okay to kind of bumble your way through it. And that's why I often recommend, join a men's group, get a coach. I know there's a lot of coaches out there working with men. A lot are using my book. And so, you don't have to do this alone. Don't reinvent the wheel. You don't have to figure out how to break out of this on your own. Go do it with other people that are maybe a couple steps ahead and maybe already know what you're going to bump into.
Yeah, speaking of, I think for me, I tried to join some nice guy groups in my area, but there weren't any. But I didn't use that as an excuse to not, try anything. As you mentioned in other podcasts, you want to find what you can, and whether it's a addict group or something else, something where there's other supportive men. So I joined a Toastmasters group, and I'm also checking out an anxiety group nearby. And I also, have a local gym community with my the CrossFit I do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic. And yeah, when I started working on me 25 years ago, there wasn't, there was therapists out there, but there weren't many men's groups. About the only books for men were by Robert Bly and Michael Meade. They were kind of Iron John and, kind of mythological. And there wasn't that much information out there. Now, that was before the internet. But now with the internet, there is so much out there. There's online groups. I participate in an online group, and we get together 3 times during the year in one location, but all our other conversations are online. I went to 12-step groups when I first started looking for a men's group. There's now meetup groups. Meetup didn't exist 25 years ago. So you can just Google or go to Meetup or Google, men's groups and put in your zip code. See what comes up. And, and like you, I started, I'd go to the gym. I'd introduce myself to guys at the gym. That turned into some guys. We started a softball team. That turned into, we started taking road trips to go watch baseball games around the country. So I created a men's group just by talking to guys at the gym. So there are a lot of ways we can go about it. And we don't have to all be in a therapy group, but just connecting with men and being with other men to get out of our comfort zone and challenge ourselves can be as helpful, as powerful. And we don't have to do this alone. Don't try to do it alone.
Yeah, so when we talk about shame, I think that's, you mentioned how a nice guy syndrome, boiled to its core, is anxiety and shame issue. I think with a lot of our young men here, their shame not necessarily comes from religious reasons, but I think maybe they do. But the big thing is probably their parents, strict rules and so forth. So can you talk a bit about shame and how you actually deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that is a big subject, and I wrote a book about it. But I'll give you a nutshell. Shame can come from a lot of ways, and it isn't necessarily because people out and out shamed you. It isn't just because they said you're bad, you're sinful, you're evil, you're nothing, you're stupid. Maybe guys got those messages. It's possible, but that's not even necessarily how the shame builds up, and a lot of times. It can, like I said, it's an inaccurate interpretation of life events. So if your parents, for example, are really rigid and expect you to make really good grades and you don't make the grades they expect, you may internalize shame. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I can't meet their expectations. Children believe they should be able to meet mom and dad's expectations. And when they don't, their parents may not be shaming them, like saying you're stupid or you're bad or you're never going to amount to anything. But they may just that rigid. You have to be this way. You have to be this way. Or if the child, it's just being a child and it's just horsing around or dancing around or knock something over, and the parents, react with all this, and maybe there's a punishment and all that. The kid's just being a kid, but then they're going to internalize, oh, I did something wrong, I'm bad. So they can get internalized in a lot of different ways, and especially if a child or a young adult starts hiding certain things about themselves. For example, most boys around 12, 13, 14, 15 years old discover, their sexuality. They start to develop and they discover masturbation feels good. They nowadays discover, you can spend a lifetime looking at porn on the internet. And his access. As I said, my son's 33, and my stepson from my second marriage is about the same age. And when I remember when we went from dial-up. Probably nobody knows what dial-up is listening right now, but we went from dial-up internet connection to broadband. All of a sudden, my sons they spent all their time stealing music on Napster and looking at porn. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, So we put the computer in the middle of the house. So it was harder for them to just start looking at porn. And we actually went back from broadband, high-speed internet to dial-up because porn is not very interesting when it takes a long time to download. So your generation grew up with easily accessible porn. And, and everybody, now every 9-year-old has a smartphone. And so they can look at whatever they want when they want. So what happens is you start doing that stuff in secret and you're hiding it because, you don't want your parents to know, you're looking at porn or you're doing anything you hide from your parents or you don't want to get caught at internalizes shame. You're bad. You're doing something wrong. You could get in trouble. So this can get internalized in a lot of different ways. And the only way I know to release shame is to do that around safe people. Go find people who are not your parents, not family, not a girl you like. This could be a minister, it could be a rabbi, it can be a coach, it can be a 12-step group, it can be a therapy group, it can be a best friend if he's a non-judgmental best friend. And start revealing the things about them that you don't want anybody to know about you. Now, this takes time, and you got to build trust. You got to do this in a safe place. And I did this in a 12-step group. I was in my mid-30s, and I started going to a 12-step group. And I grew up Christian. I grew up with kind of this really rigid religious system. And so I hid a lot of things, a lot of my impulses, behaviors. And so in this 12-step group, I just go every week and I would just start talking about everything I'd never talked about. I'd tell them, stuff I'd done or thought or impulses I had. And I never was that kind of open book before. And it felt liberating. And I thought, yeah, I like going to this 12-step group because I'd never just opened up and just let anybody see all of me. I'd never even looked inside. So that was several years ago, probably 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And I'm still in that process of looking inward at what I've stuffed down inside that says, I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I'm unlovable, I'm a bad boy, I'm evil. And I'm still in the process of letting that out around safe people. So don't try to do this alone either. Find safe people. It might be a therapist, it might be a coach, it might be a men's group, but kind of, you can go slow with this to make sure this is safe. Make sure how they handle what you reveal. And then it's liberating to just let that out and find out you're okay. You're not bad. You're not fucked up. You're not flawed. You're not defective. You're just human. And it's okay to be imperfect. And that's liberating. It lets you live up to your potential, take chances, make mistakes, look foolish, and it's okay.
That's awesome. What advice do you have for dealing with racism and excuses around that? I think a lot of our Asian audience, that's one of their biggest complaints, whether in the workplace or in dating, especially. That seems to they seem to have a defeatist attitude towards racism as their barrier to success in life.
Yeah, and I may not be the best person to have an answer for that. I mean, I'm 62. I'm a white guy born in white America. Raised during a time when it was a good thing to be white and to be a good thing to be a man, right? And the culture, of course, in America is it's a melting pot and is much more mixed now, and I probably didn't have to deal with a lot of those closed doors that black people do, Asian people do, especially black men and Asian men. I think really, a lot of stereotypes that they have to deal with. And I know I went in a year or two ago and I was changing my plan on my cell phone. I was talking to a guy in the AT&T store in Seattle area. Young black man, I think he's originally from Nigeria and living in the Seattle area. And he was a cool guy. I really liked talking to him. He showed me a picture on his phone of his car. It's like, a 10-year-old Lexus, but had these really cool rims on it. And he said that he gets pulled over by the police, for regularly, they pull him over and say, your car matched the description of a call we got for a crime. And they say that it's a black man driving a Lexus with cool rims. And they say just to pull him over. And I'm thinking, I never had to deal with that in my lifetime. Now, I now live in a cross-cultural situation. I live in Mexico. My wife is Mexican. And I see there's racism within the culture here. The European people, the European heritage, the Spanish people, they control all the power over maybe the darker native Mexicans. And my wife is dark, and we go places, and we've been in a couple of restaurants where she was just treated badly, and I'm thinking, we're in Mexico, and Mexicans are treating my Mexican wife badly, and I'm thinking, that shouldn't exist. So I want to validate that the racism does exist. Maybe not always in the way that we might project or that we might perceive, but it does exist. It is real. And I'm sure your listeners have encountered it, but probably the worst part is where it's the subtle racism that nobody's calling them a name, laughing at them, blatantly blocking their path, moving in the direction they want. But it's just subtle and you don't really know. Did I not get that promotion because I'm Asian? Did that girl not talk to me because I'm Asian? You don't know. But maybe the best suggestion I can say is don't always assume that things not going well is based on race or racism. It could be, But I would rather live my life knowing that I'm going to encounter some closed doors. I would rather not pound on closed doors. I would rather walk through open doors. It's kind of like choose the woman who chooses you. In life, I'd rather walk through an open door rather than pound on a closed one. And so rather than perceiving every closed door is the result of racism, or in my case, it could be ageism, just assume that's a closed door. I can give it a try or two, but if it seems like it's bolted and latched and not going to open, I'm not going to waste my time and energy trying to knock that door down or get someone to open it. I'm going to open my eyes to, okay, where are the doors that are open for me that I can just walk through, and I can live up to my potential. I can get my needs met. I can get what I want. So, like I said, I'm not the best person to relate to, the experience of your listeners as a young Asian man in America. But that's my best advice. Don't assume it's all racism. It is at times, for real. But you can either make yourself a victim of that, or you can walk through the doors, or you can make your own doors and go. But mainly, live life on your terms. Live life on your terms. And that's the message, I want to give to every man I talk to.
I love it. I agree. That was great. So you've experienced a lot of relationships, and I think I would love to get your opinion on, what you should look for in marriage. A lot of people sometimes emphasize the wrong things, and, some emphasize looks, some look at trust, loyalty, intelligence. What's your advice on what to look for in marriage?
Well, what I tell guys, my number one dating advice is that never try to get a woman to like you or want to be with you. That's just way too much work, and you'll do that throughout the life of the relationship, and you'll put up with way too much, and she'll treat you badly, and you won't have boundaries, and she probably won't make you happy. My core belief around dating and how we date determines the women we end up with long term, right? So who you date is going to determine the kind of woman you're with. So as you date, do it as consciously as possible. Instead of trying to get a woman to like you, try to find out, who is this woman? What is her nature? How will she fit into my life? Not how do I fit into her life? And so if you know where you're going in life, and you've got a plan, and you say, here's my passion, here's my purpose, here's my meaning, and you're moving that way, find a woman whose nature matches that well. So that means as you get to know her, if you're never going to find out what her nature is, because you're working so hard to get her to like you. But if you're putting her in lots of different situations, and so when I started dating consciously in my 40s, I would do a lot of different things with a woman as I dated her. Usually by the second or third date, I'd make her ride public transportation with me. At various times I had a Mercedes or BMW when I was dating. I'd make her get on a bus with me and go to a ball game in downtown Seattle. I'd take her to baseball games because I like baseball. I'd take her salsa dancing because I liked salsa. I'd bring her around my friends because I wanted to see what my friends thought and how she fit in with them. Not that I needed their approval, but a lot of times they'll see stuff we don't see. I would do stuff that involved getting, kind of down and dirty, or I'd go listen to live music with her. We'd go camping. I'd want to see her in a lot of different situations. And how does she adapt? How does she fit in? Does she enjoy the things I enjoy? Does she like being a part of my great life? And I would watch for her nature. Is she generous? Is she kind? Does she treat people well? Is she affectionate? Is she sensual? Is she fun to be with? Does she have a sense of humor? Is she intelligent? Those would be the things I look for. I mean, if she's attractive, you can see that right off. But I tell guys that what they say is true. Beauty's only skin deep, and beauty fades, but moody, stupid, and bitchy is forever. And you don't want those traits in your life forever. So don't just go after a woman because she boosts your ego. Find out her nature. And top of my list is she intelligent? Does she have a sense of humor? Is she generous? Does she treat people well? Those are the top of my list, because I don't want to be with a stupid woman. I don't want to be with a woman who doesn't have a sense of humor. I don't want to be with a woman that is stingy or doesn't treat people well. So put her in a lot of situations, especially in doing things you like doing, and see how she fits in. And if she just seems to keep fitting in really nicely, that's probably a good long-term partner for you.
Hmm, that's fantastic. Um, Masculinity, I think that's a huge thing that um, many men fail to adopt for whatever reason, lack of role models and so forth. Um, you mentioned taking salsa classes. I've taken salsa and tango classes for that reason,
Mhm.
and it was very eye-opening. What do you suggest? Can you talk about masculinity and the issues and what you
Well,
suggest?
that is a big subject, and I think it's what a lot of men worldwide are struggling with is that um, we don't have masculine initiation anymore. It used to be the tribe initiated the young boys into the scary world of adult masculine. Uh, in most cultures, just 50, 100 years ago, the dads took their sons out on the farm with them and worked with them, and the boys worked with their dads and their brothers and cousins and uncles and grandpa. Um, but now that doesn't usually happen. And a lot of boys grow up without much male influence, either single parent families, dad isn't around. If he is, maybe he's not there very much, or they can't get close to dad. So a lot of guys grow up without much male initiation. And I think a lot of guys are looking for that in one way or another. And there's no right way to go about it. Um, but I found actually, as you said, taking salsa lessons to be really helpful in that it taught me to lead. It taught me that, okay, in this context, the man does this, the woman does this. And I'm not talking about getting into really rigid role models or gender expectations, but it taught me to be clear and to lead and invite the woman to follow that lead. And that was really helpful. In fact, I've got a lesson in one of my online classes on relationship. I've got a PhD in marriage and family therapy. So, family systems, how marriages work, that's my bread and butter. I spent over 30 years as a marriage therapist. I'm on my third marriage. So, I've been down the road. But I've got a lesson in this class that says everything I know about relationships, I learned in salsa class and dog obedience school. I really did learn more in that context than I did in my PhD program about how to show up in a relationship. And for a lot of men, the idea of being masculine has a negative connotation. It's being machismo, it's being chauvinistic, is being an ass, is being controlling. That's not what I'm talking about being masculine. For me, masculine is a part of us that has purpose and direction and discipline. We have a feminine side too. The feminine side of us is a part that craves connection and the flow of love and being seen and being validated. That's feminine. But the masculine does. And it's true for women as well. They have a masculine and feminine side. And a lot of women spend a lot of time in their masculine side nowadays doing career, education. And they don't have a lot of room for they're not getting a lot of the love and the connection that their feminine craves. So we need both. But if we're a guy, what's happened for a lot of us, we've sacrificed that masculine self because we don't know how to be masculine without being like the jerks or the assholes or the creeps that we've heard women complain about. So that can be challenging. Now, thankfully, again, there's a lot of information on the web, on the internet. There's a lot of men's coaches out there. Like I said, I'm working with a men's coach. I'm in a men's group. It's called Embodied Men Leadership Training. And so in my 60s, I'm still learning about how to be a guy. And I love it. I love hanging out with men. That'd be my number one recommendation for guys. Go hang out with men, but not just, hang out with men that just want to play video games. Hang out with men that have passion, that want to do things with their lives, that have direction, and use that as a support system. So kind of really lean into that doing, whether it's getting to the gym regularly, taking care of business when you see yourself procrastinating, having a passion, having an intention, having goals that move you forward, and do that when you can in the context of other men. And again, believe it or not, salsa really taught me a lot about that. It taught me how to lead, how to think ahead, how to be clear, how to hold my frame. And those are all good, positive masculine traits.
Yeah, one of your other courses is called Nice Guys Rot in Middle Management.
Yeah.
Or Nice Guys Don't Finish Last. They Rot in Middle Management. I love that title. And I think um, this is something that a lot of listeners are in right now. They're middle management, tech people, or they're some type of doctor or lawyer or vet or something like that. So I want to talk a little bit about this topic. What can you talk a little bit about how someone can overcome that middle management barrier?
Well, really, all the things we've been talking about apply. It's so easy to get caught up in that emotional fusion of I got to follow the rules, I got to live up to expectations, I got to do it the right way. There's also that tendency to be people pleasers and to seek approval, which means you don't take risks and you don't challenge the boss, maybe, or you just kind of go along to get along. There's the codependent traits that come in, of maybe you're helping everybody else get their projects done and get their work done, and then your work's not getting done, or procrastination often enters into that. So really doing the things we've been talking about apply to all areas of life. And so it really that differentiated self, asking yourself, what do I want? What's important to me? Embracing that masculine self, that's the doer, that's the getting things done. Addressing your excuses. I'll get to it later, or I don't want to say this because I might rock the boat. So really all the things we've been talking about are the things that inform us for how to move forward in our work and our career. Getting out of our comfort zone, taking chances, risk, trying new things. A lot of guys, when it comes to their advancement, they maybe don't go for it because they're afraid. Well, what if I get that new job and they find out I'm not that good at it, or I don't know, what I'm supposed to know, or they find out I'm a phony. It's that fear of being found out. But everybody, when they move to the next level, is over their head. Everybody that they're now having to develop new skills they didn't have before. That's just part of kind of moving up in the business world. So being willing to take that risk, like I said, working on our shame and that fear of being found out, that we're not good enough. This is a great way to challenge those belief systems. Be willing to risk, get out of your comfort zone, meet new challenges, and walk through those open doors. And I think your listeners will find that things just naturally keep moving. And when you run into seemingly a closed door or something's not working, find a mentor, find someone that can help talk you through. Don't try to do this alone again. So mentors are essential for moving forward. So that's just, like I said, several of the things we've talked about apply in that work context as well.
Yeah, facing confrontation and doing
Oh yeah.
what needs to be done. So I love books, and I heard that you have a new book coming out eventually
Eventually, that's a good way to put it.
called
I'm working on a new book. Yes.
Around Positive Emotional Tension. So I'd love a little teaser on what this is about.
Oh man, that's a whole nother podcast. We should do another podcast and just talk about positive emotional tension. Maybe before the book comes out, we'll do that
Yeah,
again.
absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to tease, and that's all. But I'm going to create a little emotional tension for your listeners, but not give them everything, because I actually have a class they can take on it already. But here's the nutshell: a discovery that I made a few years back that helped inform everything for me of what makes women tick, and it helped me understand things I'd done right, things I'd done wrong, was an understanding that women have to experience emotional tension with a man in order to be attracted to him, want to stay with him, and to want to have sexual desire for him. Now, I'll tell you guys, just go watch the average chick flick, and you'll see what I'm talking about for the emotional tension that's going on in the movie between the woman and the man. And if they go with a girlfriend, the girlfriends love all that emotional tension, like of the Kardashians and daytime drama. We guys don't. We men don't like emotional tension in our relationship, so we never create it for women. And if the woman creates it, we try to kill it. So basically, we're doing the opposite of what works when it comes to, attracting women to us, keeping them wanting to be around us, and making them, have sexual desire for us. We don't create emotional tension, and we do everything to kill it if the woman does. So that's just a little teaser I'll give your listeners, that women have to experience emotional tension. Now, that can be positive in terms of a man doing things that make the woman feel good, or it can be negative emotional tension, like when they, get hooked up with a bad boy who treats them badly or is unavailable or is married or already has a girlfriend or sleeps with them but never calls them back. That actually turns women on as well because it's emotional tension. And the thing that we men don't understand is why women are turned on by negative emotional tension just as much as positive emotional tension, but it's tension. They have to have it. And if you aren't creating it, good luck.
So you're saying not to do that, the negative part where you're trying.
No, I never encourage people. No, I never encourage guys to treat women badly in any way whatsoever. I teach them how to create the positive emotional tension.
Got it. Awesome. So I think uh, last few topics, perfectionism. So it took you many years to write your first book, and I think perfectionism is a huge topic in the Asian American community because they have to have the perfect grades, and if it's not the perfect girlfriend, then they're not going to date. So can you talk a little bit about why it took you so long to write a book and how perfectionism can be overcome?
Part of it was perfectionism and fear and thinking when I started writing the book, I wasn't writing a book. I was just handing chapters out that I was writing to guys who were in my first No More Mr. Nice Guy group. And people started saying, you should write a book. You should go on Oprah. There's a lot of people that need this. So I thought, okay, I'll write a book. And then people saying this could be a bestseller. And all of a sudden, I'd find myself not writing very much. And I actually had to go to therapy to figure out how to finish my book. And it's because I did have this fear that I had to do it perfectly. And I realized, no, I don't. I just have to do it well enough. It doesn't have to be a bestseller. I don't have to go on Oprah. And I realized I set out writing these lessons to be able to just give to my clients to help them. And I thought, okay, that's my whole goal. I'm going to finish the book just so I can give it to my clients to help them. So I had to come up with a more realistic expectation. I did not have to write a bestseller. I just had to finish it so I could give to my clients. And it's even still played out in me writing the proposal for the book that I'm working on right now. It's taken me a couple of years just to get the proposal completed. And as we talk, I sent that into my agent last week, and he sent it off to the publisher of No More Mr. Nice Guy today. So I don't know where that's going to end up, but as we talk, that part is done, and it's time to move forward writing the book. But when it comes to perfectionism, I tell people there's really no such thing as perfectionist. There's only imperfectionist because they're not really seeing perfection. They're seeing imperfection. So it's okay to do things well enough. Some things you may want to put more focus on than others, but if you spend your entire life trying to get everything perfect, it'll just stress you out. It's sometimes well enough is enough. Sometimes just getting it done and moving on is enough. And that can be a challenge if you grow up in that perfectionistic culture. And maybe we'll spend our lifetime struggling with it. But what I usually tell people is, listen, if you're getting stuck and you're procrastinating because of perfectionism, tell yourself two things. I don't have to do it all right now, and I don't have to do it perfect. I just have to do something. Just do something right now. I'm just going to go do a little bit. I don't have to do it all, and I don't have to do it perfect. Just something. And that helps me a lot. Just sit down and just open a file on my computer. That's all. I just have to open the file and look at what I wrote, the last time I wrote. And then I notice, and all of a sudden I'm writing, and then a couple hours go by and I've been writing, and I didn't write it all, and it's not perfect, but I did something.
What do you want your legacy to be, and what are your final parting words for our audience?
Oh, good question, Will. This last month, I actually attended two men's retreat workshops in the Los Angeles area. One was Mankind Project, which I highly recommend for your listeners. Then go online, just Google Mankind Project, New Warrior Adventure. It's all about initiation. And the other one was the following weekend was the one for the men's group that I'm in. And it's the first time that we'd all met as one group. And both of the workshops really stressed, what's your meaning? What's your purpose? What's your impossible goal? What do you want to, accomplish before you die? And I really realized is that I want to raise the consciousness of the world, and especially if I can raise the consciousness of men. then I think that can kind of raise the consciousness of everybody. You know, I don't want to go into detail talking about this subject, but right now the Me Too subject is really big, and it scares a lot of men. It shuts a lot of men down, and there's a lot of women out there that have been treated badly by unconscious men who've done unconscious things to them. Maybe some of the women are just piling on and wanting to, beat up on men. Could be, but I think if I can raise the consciousness of men, it makes the world a better place, and it raises the level of women as well. So perhaps maybe my work will put an end to the gender wars and gender conflict going on out there. Men will love being men, women will love being women, and we'll both celebrate the joys and the beauty of each. So if I can die, and right now my impossible goal is to write 10 books in 10 years, most of them directed towards men and raising men's consciousness and teaching men to be leaders and make the world a better place. I'll be happy on my deathbed thinking, okay, I did my job.
Wow, that's awesome. The first time I heard increased consciousness was from Oprah, and I didn't really understand it. That was her goal. But now I think I'm starting to understand a little bit of what that means. So
Cool.
Is there anything you want to plug? Your website, your books, courses?
No, nothing specific. Tell your people listening, if they want to find me, I have an online university with self-help courses. You've mentioned several of them already. I have podcasts I've recorded, several around dating and relationships, some around recovery from nice guy syndrome. And then just go to drglover.com. It's drglover.com. Or if they just Google No More Mr. Nice Guy or Google Robert Glover, I've got all the top spots on both those pages. So I'm pretty easy to find. So check it out, and maybe they can find something to help them work on some of these things we've talked about. And if they've listened to this whole podcast, they've gotten their money's worth, and it means they're interested. So maybe they can find some more things to help them along that way.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glover. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, and hopefully your audience will find it beneficial.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Will's Personal Development Podcast. You can find more at willyoulaugh.com.